Welcome to the Impact Multiplier CEO podcast. If you're a chief executive, or if you think like one, and you want to create exponentially greater impact, then this show is for you. My name is Richard Medcalf, founder of X Quadrant. I coach some of the most successful and impressive CEOs and executive teams on the planet and help them achieve extraordinary results. And no matter how successful you've been in the past, there's always a whole new level of impact available to you. So, if you're ready to play a bigger game than ever before, I invite you to join us and become an Impact Multiplier CEO.
Today's topic is hugely timely for me. We're talking about what's holding your leadership team back. And I've come off the back of some coaching with a CEO who just very well might be the thing that's holding his team back. So I was really excited when Richard suggested this as the topic for today's discussion. So welcome to Season 3, Episode 2 of the Impact Multiplier CEO podcast. I'm Davina Stanley, and as usual, I'm here today with Richard Medcalf to discuss exactly these questions. Hi, Richard. How are you today?
Yeah, hi, Davina. It's great to be here again. Yeah, it's good. It's a cold autumn morning here in Paris as I speak, and I love this topic, right? Because it's actually about getting data on teams, which is exciting. Right? Often we don't have data, we don't have information about teams and understand what's going on. So. Um, um, I'm thinking of a Queen song, right? You know, I'm a big Queen fan, and I was so excited in our first podcast episode last time. I didn't get a Queen lyric in, which is obviously a major failing for me on a personal level. So I was thinking about what Queen songs have the word blind in, right? Because often we're flying blind. So I turned away from it all like a blind man, right? Sat on a fence, but it don't work, and that's from Under Pressure, right? So I think when we don't actually look at the facts, we get under pressure. So there's my crowbarring in a Queen lyric for today.
Perfect. And I have told you I'm quite a Queen fan, haven't I?
Well, these days everybody seems to be a Queen fan. My daughter, when she's at secondary school, and when Bohemian Rhapsody the film came out, she came back to me and said, "Dad, I'm really annoyed because like everybody's going around now saying that they're Queen fans, but you know, we've been Queen fans forever, haven't we?" So we're
You're
hardcore.
real Queen fans. Well, I must be a fake Queen fan then, because I've always known of Queen, but I fell in love with him again when I watched it, and only about a year ago, I confess. So I was even really late to the movie. How's that?
There we go.
That's disappointing for you, isn't it? So let's get into our topic today.
Yeah.
How can we find out what's holding an executive team back, particularly if they're my team? How do I know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the first question is perhaps, you know, even like, well, don't I know already? You know, if I'm an executive, why wouldn't I know this? What I see in my work with clients is that first of all, they're not actually thinking about it, right? So often we're so focused as leaders on the business. We've got goals for our business, and we think those are the goals for the executive team, right? It's like, well, if the business delivers this, then our team has delivered, which kind of is right. But they haven't really thought about the how are we going to do that? What's the goals that we have for the team? How do I want this executive team to develop and evolve and lead at a higher level in the business? So often they haven't really thought about holding me back from what. It's easy just to go, yeah, well, we're just who we are.
Like we get along really well, we work together really well. So
Yeah, we've got our
we're
issues, but
fine.
it's kind of
Yeah, we're
working. Business
fine.
is okay. It's okay. Yeah, exactly.
So are you suggesting that they're not looking for their edge and being really focused on their own internal performance, but much rather looking outside the exec team to find the problems and the issues to fix?
Yeah, often the issue is quite simply, you know, as a business leader, we've not been trained in the art of people transformation. And so we go, actually, well, the people are who we are. I can sack a few, replace them. But apart from that, this is what we've got, and we better just get on with what we can change, which is everything else, which isn't
That's an
necessarily true.
interesting assumption, isn't it? What an interesting assumption that you can't evolve people and develop people, particularly at that senior level, because I would have thought normally senior leaders are people who are aspirational, you know, they've been striving themselves to get there, so they're changing themselves on that journey, aren't they?
Yeah, I'm not saying, of course, that I'm not saying every leader is never thinking about this, but I just
Hmm.
put the point is that the weight of operations naturally leads the
Ah,
focus to be, okay, what needs to happen in this part of the business? What do we need to do here? Rather than actually stepping back and saying, okay, how effective are we being as a team? How much value are we adding? And given the changing requirements of the business, where do we want to be in 2 years or a year? What do we want to create? Who do we want to be? What does we want things to look like? So I think first of all, they're not
within
thinking about it, right? That's the key thing.
Yeah. And fair enough too. They're focusing, like you say, on the operational and perhaps strategic parts of the business
Yeah,
rather than the operations of their own internal team so much. Now that
right.
makes good sense. And I guess it would seem almost like a bit of a luxury perhaps if you haven't really thought about that deeply before, because there's so many other bigger things to deal with.
That's right. But I would like to say no organization can be healthier than its number one
Mm.
team. And so
Oh yeah.
any issues, silos, lack of communication, lack of buy-in, lack of support, lack of team goals, anything going on in the number one team of an organization will ripple through and multiply as it gets across the wider organization.
Yes, okay, and you're really wanting the good things to multiply.
Exactly.
You're really wanting strengths to multiply to make sure that performance cascades and, as you say, multiplies as
Mm.
it goes down the organization. Yeah, I
So,
see that. That makes sense.
so that's the first reason I think
Mm,
just we're not really thinking about holding me back from what, where do I actually want to be with this team. The second one is that the leader's experience is very different from the team's experience. So I was working with one country manager of a major pharmaceutical company, and we did a little survey on his team to understand what was going on, what was working, what was difficult, what did the team feel. And when we reviewed the results, he was really quite amazed about some areas because they were really different from how he perceived
mm,
things. Especially, I remember relationships. He felt relationships were pretty strong um, and open and intense. But actually, the team rated it significantly lower. And when we dived
wow.
into that, I think it was because a lot of, especially in this kind of in business units or executive teams where you have a multifunctional team coming together with a business leader, like a CEO or a country manager, you often have this star formation, right? So they all reporting in, if you like, to the CEO, but between them, the relationships aren't as strong
Mm,
because it's all being centralized through the CEO. So the CEO or the
yes.
executive team meeting is more of almost like a staff meeting where people are reporting into the CEO rather than collaboratively solving and creating
Mm,
the future for the company. So
mm,
the leader
mm.
doesn't often understand what's holding their team back because they don't actually have the perception of the team.
Well, they're not in a position to, are they? Because their relationships are very focused and strong with each of the individuals. They're not seeing them at the relationships at the outside, that
Yeah,
honeycomb that should be there where people are cross-pollinating and
yeah,
working together. It's harder to see that, I guess. Mm. And so do you
and
have any examples from that?
yeah. So well, as I said, I suppose the um, if you look at the way a team works, so again, working with a tech company, um, actually the CEO is still really seen as the ultimate decision maker. And therefore, if you like, in the meetings, I noticed people were kind of talking primarily to the CEO
Mm,
um, and not, there was this lack of connections between the team. I mean, they were talking with each other, obviously, and debating and jumping in, but there was still this kind of gravity towards the CEO who was kind of holding forward, right? Holding counsel, if you like,
mm,
and people
mm,
were kind of
mm,
seen as more they were advising, and then he would make the decision, with people kind of basically saying, "Yeah, okay," but not necessarily with that sense of buy-in. Um, and of course, the issue here is what we're really talking about here, Dev, I think, is that um, last time we talked about, well, as a leader, what might be giving you the sense that your team is not creating enough value or creating as much value as it could. And I think today what we're going is to say, well, your perception might well be right, team meetings might suck, right? People might not be having enough ownership, um, whatever it is that's annoying you. But if you actually want the team to move forward, it's actually the team's perception that's the real starting point, because that's
Yes,
what you're going to need to
okay.
shift.
Yes, okay. It is absolutely. And just orienting yourself to be aware of that. And I think you gave a bit of a clue just before as to a way or something that you can watch for is the dynamic around the team meetings. You know, if you're the CEO and you're making every single decision and you are doing, I don't know what percentage you would suggest, but the vast bulk of the talking.
Mm.
And I think that perhaps is a bit of a hint, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can start to
Mm.
measure exactly those kind of things. Again, it's very hard, and we might even know some of those things, but again, it's still our perception of what are people feeling
Mm.
about that. We might feel actually they're okay with it. I'm doing this. Um, they're actually quite happy for me. Frankly, when I ask them to make a decision, they don't do it. So they obviously want me to make it. So our perception is one thing. It's very different when you start to really understand what's going on in their heads,
The
right?
why they're behaving the way they are.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So that I guess, you know, how can you, if you are an executive, a leader, a CEO, how can you work out what is holding your team back then? If it is that difficult to work it out because we're so,
Mm.
not fixated, but so aware of our own perceptions and it's so difficult to get into other people's point of view, if you like. Um, what
Mm.
things can you do? How can you find out what is holding them back?
Yeah, so there's a few approaches. I think the first one is really the main one, perhaps, is what I'd call the three conversations. So the first conversation is, what's our commission? Okay, what is our commission as a leadership team? What can we do that nobody else can do? We touched on this last time, but it's key because what you're doing there is you are forcing the team to have a conversation on the outside view. Okay, it's easy to start with us, our team, what's going on, what the dynamics are, who doesn't like who, who seems to be sleeping around the table, whatever it is. But going like, who needs us, right? What's our commission? What are stakeholders' requirements of us, and how's that changing? Well, how are we going to need to be different in the future from where we are today? So what that does is it takes the team into the future. It creates that future self idea. Really, it's like, where do we need to be going? How do we need to be serving uh, the stakeholders, our shareholders, our employees, our customers, our suppliers, the wider world. So that's the first place, because then what you're doing is you're starting to kind of get agreement, like check, do we have agreement about what our purpose is here? I think the second question is, okay, given that, what do we want to create? Who do we want to be? Because it's okay, well, very well, objectively saying, well, these are probably all the worthy things that people are requiring of us, and they're probably in conflict, right? You've got different stakeholders, different requirements. But what do we want to take ownership for? Because, we might not actually want to fulfill all of these stakeholder requirements on us. We might not find them more motivating or equally valid. So what is it that we as a team want to be, right? How do we want to be leading this business in the
Mm.
months to come? And so that's really creating this understanding of, well, holding me back from what? Because unless you have an inspiring vision of where you want to go, nothing's holding you back, right? Because you're not really moving as a team.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I can see that. Now I'm picturing that circumstance play out in teams that I've been part of. I know exactly what you mean. It can be a little bit aimless, can't it? Where if you have got that focus on how you want to be and how you want to behave and how you want to work together and what really great looks like, then it's much easier to get there, like with anything.
Yeah.
Mm,
So
mm.
with anything on every level, inertia is our biggest enemy. it's
Oh,
it's
so it is.
it's our default state.
It's too comfortable.
Whatever it is, inertia is our default state. If you want to know what you're going to do next week, I'll have a look at what you're doing this week, and that's going to be the best prediction of what you're going to do next week in any
So
area of
true.
life. And so
Yes.
these two conversations are really trying to shift the dynamic away from inertia. It's back to that thing. Well, we're just the exec team. This is who we are. right? How do we actually run this company? That's kind of but you're still in inertia in terms of how you're operating. But if you say,
Yes.
wouldn't it be amazing if we were leading at this level, if these were the conversations we were having, if this was the level of trust and support we could bring each other, if this is how we were growing as a team, if this is how we were shifting the things that we were focused on, perhaps we're less in operational detail, more on the big picture. We've really successfully delegated as a team all of the kind of minutiae so that we can really focus on the strategic initiatives. All these things, when people start to picture that, then you can start to ask about what's holding us
Mm,
back.
mm. And when you see that play out in a practical setting,
Mm.
what does that look like? Have you got an example that you'd like to share just to help us really ground that in reality?
Yeah. So so recently working with a software as a service company, with their executive team, and they're a hugely successful company. I mean, they've got a great tailwind in the market. They're the leader in their field, and they're high growth, a lot of growth. And when we started to ask these questions and think about, well, what's going to be different in 2 years' time in the market, in the organization? It's going to be a lot bigger. The things that perhaps worked 2 years ago are certainly not going to be the things that help you succeed 2 years hence. And as we did this, so we really had that one session. We broke people up into groups. We got them to think about the different stakeholders, to map out what's the requirements now and what's the requirements in 2 years going to be, and then what do we want to be. And it takes a while because you've got quite a large team. Often executive teams, they can be quite large. I mean,
Mm,
there's probably about 10 people more or less, and so you have to figure out a way to get all of people's views heard and understood. But when we filtered all that down, we came up with really 5 transitions, if you like, 5 themes, right? So from this to this. And I think that's a really helpful way to look at it. It's like, what are these the big themes, the big shifts that we want to see in the team? Um, um, Often they start not so much by I tend not to ask them to be the shifts to start with. I tend to say, what do you want to be? But normally people describe where they want to be in relation to where they are today, right? You want to be more this or less
mm,
this, or do
mm.
this. And so and things that don't change, they probably forget to mention or don't mention. So things that people bring up tends to be the shifts that people want to see. And then I suppose the third conversation following on from that is then, okay, so if we were to focus on just one thing in the next season, what would that be? Which of those themes is the theme to really focus in on?
And can I ask you, before we go to that, what were the 5 themes from that company? What were the sorts of things that they were wanting to shift?
Um, so let me think. For that company, there were things like, well, so for example, from being the operational management of the company to the strategic management of the company
Yep.
was one key theme.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, um, Another theme was around their meetings, in fact. So one of their themes was, we need to become a decision-making powerhouse um, in those, bi-monthly meetings or whatever they had, and move away from, say, these kind of lengthy operational reviews, financial
Yes.
updates, information like being presented to, or discussing topics that never quite get resolved. Um, so they
To
wanted,
pick up the momentum.
yeah, exactly. So that was another example. Um, I can give you some of the other ones, but I think that those are probably give you the idea,
Mm, mm,
that you're really trying to zoom in on what are those kind of few key things that perhaps are getting in the way.
mm, mm, mm. So if you're going to focus on just one thing,
Hmm.
what would it be? If you're going to improve one thing so that you can find out what's holding the team back, what would it be?
Yeah, so this is the question about focus, right? Because again,
Mm,
we often go, great, we can see all these things that would be amazing about our team, and that's great. But the danger is if we try and do it all, we don't do anything, and we get cynical and we go, well, waste of time, we don't change, let's just make do with who we are. So I think it's
Yeah.
really worth focusing on one thing, making a marked difference in one area and getting that working for us, and then moving on to another area. We can come back to the first area again. Perhaps we're going to circle around these themes, but we need to really get a sense of progress and winning, and the fact that, yeah, this is actually making our life better.
Yes, and even if you've got 5 themes that have come out of your meeting, pick one and just stick with it till you get some traction with it and get some momentum on it, and then you feel it's moving, then maybe pick another one and build on that. Yeah, I like that, because it's just too distracting. And I think you said earlier, didn't you, that one of the big challenges is that teams are so naturally busy with the operations and running the business that they don't necessarily focus on themselves. So to give them a huge agenda for change for themselves is probably not going to fly, is it?
No,
Pick one thing.
Exactly.
And
Minimum
go with it.
viable habit, if you like, just like get something working and build on that. Now, one thing that I love to do, I mean, so these conversations are great. Something that you can actually do before that often, or as part of that, and which actually really kicks things off and gets people thinking about this, is a Team 360 survey. So this is, again, the point is, we're trying to get data. We talked about data at the very start, right? You don't want to be flying blind and not facing reality. But when you get data, it's transformational. So we have at X Quadrant, we have a survey. You can either use it just within the team or the people within the team, or also you can sometimes also include stakeholders and get their views on what they see the team is doing well as a team, not as individuals, but what the team is doing well, and what frustrates them about the team or their interactions with the team, which can be, again, fantastic information. As a leadership team, you might think you're the world's most amazing team until you talk to your reports, and then the level of clarity or whatever coming out from you, or the consistency and strategy or whatever it is, these things can be real pain points elsewhere.
They can, can't they? So you're really holding the mirror up to the team as a whole, and finding out what's really going on and getting the data so you can then adjust. Yeah.
And I see that there are really, I like to look for 3 things in that data. I call them blind spots, black spots, and hot spots.
Oh, I
So
like that. Yes.
your blind spot is, oh, as a leader, I did not see that coming. Or even as a team, we didn't see that. Wow, we didn't know that our stakeholders feel that we are, a siloed bunch of people playing political games. We didn't. That's not our self-perception. That's their, what's going on there. Or blind spot as well. I had no idea that people are demotivated in this team. They all seem to be working hard. I had no idea that they felt totally disempowered, for example. That's a blind spot. A black spot is where the whole team clearly identifies there's a problem. Like, oh, our meetings, they're terrible. We, for some reason, we just can't get our act together. People are rocking up late. Decisions
Unprepared.
don't work. Yeah, we're not prepared enough. There's no pre-reading. People, we're having to spend half the meeting educating ourselves about the issues that we're trying to talk about, etc. So they're the black spots that everyone understands. And then you have hot spots where there is disagreement or different perspectives in the team. So sometimes, at least one version of the Team 360 that I've used, I actually show the team the full range of responses. So let's say you got 10 people, I'll show them the kind of the overall score for the team, but I'll show all the 10 dots across the scale from, say, 1 to 100. And on some of the questions, people are like, wow, I can't believe some people have scored this at 90%, like they're happy at 90%, and some people are down at 10%. And so your average might be at 60% or something, but it's actually hiding this real range, which means that my lived experience in the team is not at all the lived experience of the person sitting next to me at the table. I might feel I'm able to express myself, that this, that we're having robust debate. The person next to me might feel that they're totally shut down every time they speak, or that the conversation is dominated by 2 people, and so forth. And so depending on who you are, you might be the person speaking all the time or the person totally silent. You have a very different experience of life on that team.
Yeah, no, I can see that. No, I love those statements: black spots, blind spots, and hot spots. I think that's fantastic. So is that a good time to wrap perhaps for today? Next time we're going to talk about the most common complaints CEOs and their leadership teams make, that there's not enough ownership for the desired business outcomes. That's something I see a lot in my own team and also in my own consulting work with others as well. Do you have anything to add to that just to close us out, Richard?
Yeah, so I've thought three things. One, first of all, is you're right. This is going to be an exciting topic next time. Ownership. It's one of the just the top of mind issues for so many leaders. And there's some real practical things you can do about that. Second thing is we were just talking about the Team 360 as a way of getting data on what's holding your executive team back. It's often the easiest way to get started on these conversations, because the first thing you're doing is giving people a quick and easy way to share what their reality is, what they're seeing. And we've got a great survey instrument that we use at X Quadrant, and normally we charge for that, but for people listening to this podcast episode, if you reach out to us, you can reach out at podcast@xquadrant.com. And if you reach out and mention the Team 360 survey, we'll help set you up with a free access to the diagnostic tool for your team. So very happy to help you with that.
Oh, that's great. That's really generous, I think.
And well, I just think, again, people listening to this probably got to identify there's something going on with their team, and I'd love to see whether we can help pinpoint what that is. And then the final point, perhaps the thought to leave you with is, you have a vision for what your business is to become, but do you have a vision for what your executive team is to become? And you understand your business through data, but do you have data to understand the health of your number one team?
Great place to wrap. Thank you for that. That's great. So look, if anyone does want to go and get the show notes and get the details of that survey or anything else that relates to this podcast, feel free to go to the website. We're at www.xquadrant.com/season 3 episode 2. And if you're wanting to look around and see some of the other episodes, you can go to xquadrant.com/podcast. So thanks so much, everyone, today. We look forward to talking to you again in the next one. Bye for now.
Thanks, Davina. Bye now. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Now let's talk about you. When you're in top leadership, when you're in the biggest role of your career, who supports you at a deep level as you lead others? Who helps you multiply your impact and get to the next level? If you're ready to learn more about our content, our coaching, and our community, then visit us at xquadrant.com.